وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي مولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning predestination and free will is one of the most important discussions in religious thought, and a discussion that requires a thorough analysis, for it is a discussion that affects each and every one of us. Because since time immemorial, many religious scholars, theologians, and philosophers have sought to discuss the area of whether our actions are predestined by God or whether we have free will in the choices that we make, whether our actions can be changed or whether God has already determined what our future is. And therefore you find that this question is one which has been examined by all religions. As an example, within Christianity, one finds theologians such as Saint Augustine or even people like John Calvin who have come to different conclusions as to whether our actions are predestined or whether we have free will. You find one school which comes forward and states that all our actions are predestined already, and that all we are really doing is reaping the rewards of these actions or otherwise being tested. And you have another school which comes forward and states that there are enough verses in the holy books which show that mankind has been given free will. And therefore you find that contemporary discussions continue to provide us with a whole host of differing opinions as to whether we are responsible for our actions or whether God has already written everything. From the school of the pessimists such as the fatalists, all the way to the school of the optimists such as those who believe in free will, we find that there are many differing opinions, and these opinions have to be studied in depth. As an example, the fatalist school is that school which comes forward and states that everything is governed according to fate, that there's no point trying to resist fate, and there's no point trying to be stubborn against fate. And they come forward with what is known as the idol argument. The idol argument is that argument which looks at a person when they are ill. And the argument comes forward and states, if you are fated to recover from an illness, then irrespective of whether a doctor comes to you or not, you will recover. And if you are fated not to recover from an illness, then irrespective of whether a doctor comes to you or not, you will not recover. Therefore it is fated that you will either recover or not recover from an illness. That school is the school which comes forward and states that every decision you make is not in your hands. Fate governs your movements, and therefore that school was called the fatalist school. And you find that many scholars come forward and says that fatalism is a way where man accepts that which is inevitable. Man comes forward and accepts that which is inevitable without standing up against it. Therefore that is one opinion. Then you have an opinion of those who believe in predestination, who come forward and say that God has predestined all our actions and that we have no choice whatsoever. We may come and have part of the action, what they call iktisab, but otherwise we do not have anything more than that. Then you have a third school which comes forward and says that no, that God knows about everything that we're going to act does not mean He gets involved in our actions. And therefore they differentiate God's attributes with the dimensions of the actions in which the human being lives in. Then you have a fourth school which comes forward and says, no, mankind has got complete free will. God does not interfere in any of their actions. Mankind has been given the choice to do that which is right and that which is wrong. So we see therefore that throughout history many different opinions have come forward in relation to this topic. And that's why the discussion concerning predestination and free will is a discussion which is political as well as social. Political in the sense that a dictator's dream is the ideology of predestination. Because what is a dictator? A dictator is someone who seeks to dictate his opinions about the world on his subjects who live within his state, and he does these through many different means, either through physical force or through explaining a particular ideology. And that the best ideology which suits any political dictator is predestination. Why? Because so that when anybody comes and speaks out against that dictator, the dictator can easily turn around and say that all of our actions have been predestined by God. Therefore, the fact that I rule over you is not my choice. God has predestined that I govern you. And that's why you find many dictators throughout history used predestination as a political tool, that whenever any of the masses would speak out against them, they would point to the idea of predestination, and they would come out and say that we are only governing you because God has chosen us. That's why you find Patricia Kroner and Martin Hines in their book God's Caliph discuss the idea that Umayyads saw themselves as the shadow of God on earth. And they used to always come forward to those who would say that how dare you perform injustice, by replying that it's not us who are performing injustice. God is making us perform injustice. Every one of our actions, God has made us perform. That's why Ibn Ziyad, as a prelude to the discussion, said to Sayyida Zainab that it's not me who killed Hussein. God decided that Hussein will die in this way. Therefore, God is the one who killed Hussein, because he has already predestined everything. To which Sayyida Zainab replied by saying, but God has also given you free will, that you had the choice of acting that which you've acted. Politically, predestination was a tool of dictators. Then on a second level, the idea of predestination could also be a social fallacy. Why? Because there are many people in the world today who act irreligious acts by saying that it's God who's already written that I would act this. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and act it. You see, on a night like tonight, the night of New Year's Eve they call it. On a night like tonight, you'll find some people possibly who'll go out. They may party, they may club, they may drink that which they drink, they may smoke that which they smoke. When somebody comes to them and says to them, what are you doing? They say, well, God has already predestined my action. God knew that I was going to do this, so I might as well act out God's plans. And this is a disease which affects many societies, where many people, when they go through a bad phase in their life, the whole blame, they place it upon God. They come forward and they say, it's not me. God already knows, so God has already predestined that which I act. And therefore, whenever you see a disease in a society, know that the blame always goes on predestination and never goes towards free will. Therefore, tonight's discussion seeks to define where is predestination and free will discussed in Islam, number one. Number two, what are the rational and the traditional discussions of predestination and free will? Number three, what are the different schools of Islam's opinions? Are all our actions predestined by God? Or has He given us free will? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Number three. Number four, if God knows everything I'm going to act, does this have a bearing on my action or no? Does knowing something interfere in someone's action or no? Number five, are there actions in Islam where we can change our destiny or no? Are there certain acts which may change our future or no? That's number five. And then number six, we will see how Hurr bin Yazid al-Riyahi used his free will to change on the 10th of Muharram. Let's examine this area in depth. Number one, this area of predestination and free will, where is it discussed in Islam? This area is discussed under theology, because as we know, the religion of Islam is a triangle. a triangle which you could call TEJ. Because when someone today comes and asks you the question, why should I become Muslim? There are many other religions in the world for me to go and join. You have to be able to provide an answer where you show that your religion is a structured religion, not a haphazard religion which has evolved over time depending on who went through a religious experience or depending which government wanted to change which law. You have to be able to show a structure to the religion. The religion of Islam has three sciences which govern the religion. Number one, ethics. Number two, jurisprudence. And number three, theology. Ethics is that science which governs our relationship with each other. Because no society can continue or progress without people understanding the rights of themselves, the rights of the people alongside them, the duties that they have, the obligations that they have. Therefore, the first science is the science of ethics. The second science is the science of jurisprudence, which is what? Which is the science which teaches us how we behave with our own selves. What laws govern us with our families? What laws govern us with our communities? What laws govern us with the state in which we live? What laws govern us in terms of business contracts? That's the second science, the science of jurisprudence. The third science is this one, the science which is known as theology. What is theology? Theology is your relationship with God. Ethics is between you and the people. Jurisprudence is you and yourself. Theology is your relationship with God, where you begin to understand the different attributes of God and how they affect your life. Because we know God has positive attributes, negative attributes. All of these have a relationship to the way we live our life. Without comprehending these attributes, we will never understand the whole basis to our creation and how we can progress. In Arabic, the science of theology is called ilm al-kalam. Kalam means what in English? Kalam literally means to speak with each other. When you hear the word yatakallam, yatakallam means a person who speaks. So why was the science of theology called the science of speaking? Because it was the science of discussion. Theology is a science which you have to be able not just to follow what's written in the Holy Book. You have to be able to rationally discuss every area of theology, because we know very well in Islamic theology you have 5 pillars. At-Tawheed within the school of Ahlul Bayt, At-Tawheed, Adala, Nubuwa, Imama, and the Day of Judgment. These 5 you cannot imitate a scholar in. These 5 you yourself must be able to discuss through rationality as well as through tradition. If you are not able to discuss these 2 rationally and through tradition, then you have not understood the very basis of the religion of Islam. Because when we come to the usul al-din, you find many people, if you ask him, explain to me adala, he'll say to you, to tell you the truth, I know it's one of the usul al-din, but rationally I can't explain what it means. If you ask someone about the Day of Judgment, he will not be able to explain it to you rationally or from tradition. Every area of the usul al-din has 2 areas of discussion. Number 1, a rational discussion. Number 2, a traditional discussion. A traditional discussion is when you look at that concept from the Quran or from the Ahadith. A rational discussion is when you think of the concept logically and then ask questions related to that concept. That's why in predestination and free will, you can discuss predestination and free will rationally and traditionally, from your heads as well as from the book. In terms of rationally, the first question we have to ask about predestination and free will is that, why does Allah put tyrants in hell? As in, that tyrant who God puts in hell, rationally it doesn't work. Why? Because if everything is predestined, then it's not just that God puts him in hell. Rationally, if I say that every action we perform, God has predestined and we have no choice, then the question has to be asked, that why was Fir'aun, or why is Fir'aun going to be placed in hell? Fir'aun could easily, rationally come on the Day of Judgment and say, hold on, you predestined all my actions. I had no choice. When I killed the people of Israel, I had no choice. You made me do it. When I tried to torture the babies, I had no choice. You made me do it. Rationally, to say everything is predestined doesn't work. Why? Because it will destroy the justice system which Islam discusses about God. Because we say in the religion of Islam that on the day of judgment, God rewards those who have done good and punishes those who have done bad. But those who have done bad, if we come to a belief that everything is predestined, can come on the day of judgment and easily say that, God, why have you put me in hell when you are the one who made me perform this action? Rationally, it's absurd to say that all our actions are predestined, because then you cannot say that one of the usul al-din is adala. Adala is justice. Justice dictates that God does not punish except somebody who had the free will to perform an act. Otherwise, if God puts someone in hell without giving him the free will, then that's not acceptable. That's why if you were to discuss predestination and free will traditionally, you've put rationality aside, discuss it from the Quran. Many people ask a question. Allah himself in the Quran says, I guide whoever I want to guide, and I misguide whoever I want to misguide. Therefore, how could the Quran be a religion, a book of justice, when God within the Holy Quran says, I guide whoever I want to guide, and I misguide whoever I want to misguide? What if I'm not in God's good books? What if all of a sudden God says, I just don't like you. I want to misguide you. Now, the Quran in the verse comes forward and says, God guides whoever he wants to guide and misguides whoever he wants to misguide. Therefore, if God wants to misguide me, what can I do about it? That's not the way the verse is interpreted. And that's why many a time the problem is the translation, not the verse of the Quran. The problem is the translation. The translation sometimes is literal without taking an understanding of theology. Why? Because many times people come and ask this question that God says in the Quran, I'll misguide whoever I want to misguide. What if God therefore has decided to misguide me? What do I do? The explanation can be given in a metaphor about the builders who build your house. What do I mean? When we have a piece of work which needs to be done in our house, when we have this piece of work, there are two types of builders who will come and build our house. There is a builder, you've agreed with him that he's going to come from 9 to 5. He comes at 10:30 and leaves at 4. You look at him, you say, excuse me, haven't we agreed a contract? That you're meant to come at 9 and you leave at 5? Yes, but I've been really busy and I have so many other places to go. In the future, I'm going to work on making sure I come on time. Then you have a second type of builder, you've agreed with him 9 to 5. He comes at 8 and he leaves at 6. You look at him, you get surprised. This person, I told him to come at 9, he comes at 8. I told him to leave at 5, he leaves when? He leaves at 6. This type of person, you look at him and you say, I'm full of praise for you. That I've agreed with you at 9 to 5, but you're coming 8 to 6. Now let me put you in the next scenario and you'll know what this verse means. Imagine, brothers and sisters, that the first builder one day comes to you and says, excuse me, I've forgotten my ladder at home. Can you give me another ladder? Are you going to be willing to give him after he's been late every single day or no? No. Whereas what if the second person, the second builder who's on time every day, one day comes to you and says, excuse me, I've just forgotten my ladder. Do you mind giving me one? You'd be ready to give him one straight away. What does this mean? These are the two theological concepts of tawfiq and khidlan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not that he guides who he wants to guide and misguides who he wants to misguide. No. It's that Allah guides whoever is looking for his guidance. And Allah keeps in misguidance the one who's not interested in being guided. There's a difference. There's a major difference. To say that Allah guides whoever he wants to guide and misguides, people can turn around to you and say, what type of God do you have? He picks and chooses who he wants to guide. No, that's not our God. Our God, if you are looking for his guidance, he'll open for you the doors of guidance. But when you are not interested at all in his guidance, it's not that he'll misguide you. He'll just keep you in misguidance. That's why on this level we find that within the schools of Islam today, there are 3 different opinions about God's predestination and free will. 3 different opinions about whether we control our actions or God does. One of them is from the school of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. The other 2 are from our brothers from other schools in Islam. Because you notice many times when we hear our brothers, we imagine they have one concrete opinion about everything. No. On this area of predestination of free will, we have our opinion, but our brothers in Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they have two contrasting opinions on this area, because they are divided into two theological schools, Al-Mu'tazila wal-Ash'ara. The Mu'tazilites differ with the Ash'arites in relation to this area. How? The Mu'tazila originally were a group of people who stemmed from 8th century Basra. Originally, it started with a person called Wasil ibn Ata. Wasil ibn Ata was sitting in the lesson of Hassan al-Basri. Hassan al-Basri was giving a lecture. Wasil walked out because he disagreed with the lecture. Why? The lecture was on the idea of a Mu'tazilite concept called al-manzila bayn al-manzilatayn. The lecture was discussing the idea that if a person is a Muslim, but they are sinful, what category do they come under? Do they come under the category of being a mu'min or a kafir? Have you ever thought about it? If a person is a Muslim, but he's sinful, you can't call him a mu'min, nor can you call him a kafir. The Mu'tazila, Wasil, he walked out, because Mu'tazila means what? Those who exclude themselves from the opinion. He walked out, he said, in my opinion, the person who is not a mu'min or a kafir is in a manzila bayn al-manzilatayn. He is neither a mu'min nor is he a kafir. He is a Muslim fasiq. Originally, that's the reason the Mu'tazila rose. But later on, they called themselves Ahl al-Tawheed wal-Adl. The people of Tawheed and of justice. Why did they call themselves this? Because they were of the opinion that all our actions are governed by reason, and that we have complete free will in all our actions. That's their side. Then came another school in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. One name, two schools. Another school came called what? The Ash'arite school of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari had the opinion that we don't have free will. All our actions are predestined by God. You see how far wide the schools are. One title, two completely different schools. One opinion, complete free will. The second opinion, complete predestination. Come to the school of Ja'far ibn Muhammad and see what he says. When they asked our sixth Imam, what is the position of Al Muhammad? Are all our actions predestined by God, or do we have free will? He said that it's in the position between the two of these. We are in the middle of the two of these. They asked him, explain. He said to the person who was standing in front of him, he said to him, lift your right leg. The person lifted his right leg. He said to him, now lift your left leg at the same time. He said, I can't. How can you lift both at the same time? He said, that's the ratio. There are some things you control, there are others controlled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One you lift, the other you can't control. In life, there are certain things we control, and there are others which are what? Which are controlled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The people I was born into, the family, the parents, could I control it? No. That's predestined and decided. But my decisions about the way I live my life, no. That's controlled by my free will. That's why many of you would have heard the famous narration, which has been repeated by many a scholar, regarding Bahlul and Abu Hanifa. The famous narration, when Bahlul, the companion of our 6th and 7th Imam, Bahlul used to know that Abu Hanifa had three opinions. Abu Hanifa used to say, all our actions are predestined by God. We have no free will. Number one. Number two, that shaitan will not burn in fire because he is made from fire. Number three, that God will be seen on the day of judgment because everything that exists can be seen. Bahlul one day saw Abu Hanifa. He came near him, picked up a piece of clay and threw it on Abu Hanifa's head. When he threw the piece of clay on Abu Hanifa's head, what happened? When he threw this piece of clay, Abu Hanifa was in extreme pain. He took Bahlul towards the court of the judge of the time. As you know, Bahlul, as we mentioned a couple nights earlier, walks around in his broomstick. He runs around with it, making noises as he's running. So when he entered the courtroom, the judge was sitting there. He looked at Bahlul. Bahlul's here. And who's next to him? Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa's next to Bahlul. What's going on? Abu Hanifa said, I've come, I want a punishment for this person. Why? Because he threw a piece of clay on me and now I'm in extreme pain. The reply that came was what? The reply that came at this moment was, Bahlul, did you perform such an act? He said, yes, I did. And as he's saying it, he's moving around. He said to him, why did you perform such an act? He said, Abu Hanifa says, Shaitan will not burn in fire because he's made from fire. I picked up clay, threw it on clay, and clay is in pain. Number one. Number two, what's the second area? He said, number two, Abu Hanifa says Allah can be seen on the day of judgment because he says that everything that exists will be seen. I've picked up clay, thrown it on him, and he's in pain. Can he show me pain? Number two. Number three, Abu Hanifa says all our actions are predestined by God. Therefore, it wasn't me who threw the clay. Allah made me do it. And this way, he made him understand that don't blame me if I come and shoot you or if I come and kill you, because society will disintegrate if predestination is the norm. Society will disintegrate because our chains will be around our necks from tyrants who will tell us, it's your fault, it's not mine. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being with the free will. That's why the same Abu Hanifa came to visit our sixth Imam one day. When he came to visit Imam as-Sadiq, when he came near him, who met him at the door? Imam Musa al-Kadhim, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. When he met him, Imam was 5 years old at the time. 5. Abu Hanifa came near him, master of the school of jurisprudence. He said, can I see your father? Imam went, came back. He said, my father's just a bit busy. The Imam says to Abu Hanifa, can I help you? What a school. At 5 years old, they are ready to answer your questions. He said, can I help you? He said, yes, I have a dilemma. He said, what is it? He said, is it us who commit a sin? Is it us and God? Or is it God who makes us commit sins? Imam al-Kadhim said, the answer is very simple. He said, if it is God who makes us commit sins, then it's not fair he puts us in hell when he's the one who made us commit them. If it is us and God, then again it's not fair that we are put in hell when God was part of the crime, part of the action. Therefore it is us alone who commit a sin. As the Quran says, Inna hadaynahu sabil, imma shakiran wa imma kafura. We have guided mankind onto the right path. He is either grateful or ungrateful. We have given him the choices. It's then up to him to make the decisions. That's why on the next level, when the discussion continues, there are people who say, Allah, but he knows everything. Therefore, I don't have a choice. You are here mixing the attributes of Allah in this statement. Why? There is two fallacies whenever people make this statement, because there are many who make it. There are many who come forward and say that it's not us who are committing the crime, it's God. How? There are many who come forward and say that God knows everything I was going to do, I have no choice. You are making two fallacies. Number one, you are putting God in our dimension. God is outside the dimensions of time and space. When you are saying that God's knowledge affects our actions, you are making God at one with the creation. Whereas God is outside the dimensions of his creation, number one. Number two, you are mixing God's omnipotence with God's grace, or God's omniscience with his grace. In which way? When we come forward and say Allah is all-knowing, yes, without a doubt, Allah is all-knowing of every action we're going to perform from now until the day of judgment. But does his knowledge affect our behavior? Because we are recognizing he's all-knowing. At the same time, we recognize Allah has an attribute, which is the attribute of grace. His grace determined that he gave mankind free will. When you say Allah is all-knowing and you admit that Allah has given man free will, it means the two of these attributes cannot come together. That's why there's a difference between predeterminism and predestination. Predeterminists say Allah can see everything. It doesn't mean he affects the actions of everyone. Whereas people who believe in predestination say Allah can see everything and he is the one who controls all our actions. Predeterminism, what do they say? Allah has the knowledge of everything. But His knowledge of everything doesn't mean He writes what we're going to do. We write our own books and we read them on the Day of Judgment. It's like the analogy of a hospital. If I am in a hospital now, I could see someone in front of me who for years he was being told, take your medication, take your medication. But they don't listen. However much you tried, they will not listen to you. When you are in a hospital and you can see them dying in front of you, when you see them dying, you have the knowledge that they are going to die. But do they die because of your knowledge? They die because of their own action. You have the knowledge. Why? Because you know X plus Y equals Z, 1 plus 2 equals 3. You know that when all the factors come together, this is going to be the action. But when I know that that person is dying, they don't die because I know. My knowledge doesn't affect their action. But I could tell because of the causes what's going to happen. Let me give you another example. A teacher tells the students, hand in your assignments by the month of April. Otherwise, you're not going to do well in your exams. The teacher has the knowledge of the future and the idea that if these students don't hand in their assignments, they're not going to do well in their exams. This one student, whenever the teacher pleads with them to hand in, they don't hand in. Again, they don't hand in. Again, they don't hand in until the exams come in May. When that teacher sees the student entering, the teacher looks at the student and the teacher knows because the student isn't handing in the assignments, they will never pass this exam. The teacher knows they will not pass, but does the student fail because the teacher knew? No. The student fails because the student had the ability. The student had the free will to act their own actions, but they didn't take the signs that came in front of them. Had they taken those signs, then they would have been able to perform their actions and pass their exams. That's why on the next level in the school of Ahlul Bayt, we are of the belief that our destiny is in our own hands. How? Because of the concept of the idea that there are certain actions which the angel of death has written, but Allah may change depending on the actions of the human being. What do I mean? Explain and understand this concept. The angel of death, some people ask, who has the same knowledge? Does God have the same knowledge as the angel of death? If we say that, that means God, we should worship the angel of death, because the angel of death then is on equal terms with God. What we say is the angel of death no way has absolute knowledge. The angel of death simply has a clipboard. For example, on that clipboard it says, Sayyid Ammar Nakshawani will die at the age of 100, inshallah. It says this on the clipboard. This knowledge on that clipboard, is it certain knowledge? No, it's not. Because nobody has certain knowledge except Allah. Do we agree? Therefore, this knowledge on the clipboard of the angel of death is open to change depending on the human whose name is on there. How? How many times have you heard the hadith? If a person performs Salat al-Rahim, Allah will increase his lifespan from what is written. Isn't therefore Allah offering you the opportunity to say that the angel of death has written on the clipboard that you will die at the age of 60? Phone one of your grandparents and just ask how healthy they are. I will be willing to remove that number and make it 80. Is it Allah who is controlling? No, it's in your hands. Salat al-Rahim, your behavior with your relatives is in your hands. If you are good with them, then that clipboard, you can change it from what was already written. Does that mean Allah's knowledge changed? No. Allah all along knew when you're going to die. The angel of death wasn't sure when you're going to die. And therefore there is a possibility of a change in that which is written for you. I remember our 7th Imam asked his companion Shu'aib. He said to him, Shu'aib, I have a companion of mine coming from Maghrib, from Morocco. He's going to be coming to the Kaaba. His name is Yaqub. When you see him near the Kaaba, go up to him, approach him, and bring him to my house. Shu'aib says, I went near the Kaaba, I saw this person staring at me. I looked at him, I said, excuse me, do you know me? He said, yes, you're Shu'aib, take me towards Musa al-Kadhim. He said to him, how do you know? He said, don't worry, there are ways of communicating with the Imam. Take me towards him. So we took him towards the Imam, he entered upon the Imam. The Imam looked at Yaqub straight away. What did he say to him? He said, Yaqub, the way you and your brother behaved with each other on the journey towards me, is not the way which the religion of Islam teaches. And because of the insults you exchanged, your brother exchanged on you, the way he insulted you, Allah has decided to decrease his life from what was written. But he said, "Oh Imam, does that mean my life is going to be decreased?" Imam said, "No. Because of your establishing good relationship with your auntie recently, Allah has decided to increase your lifespan by 20 years from what was written." Was it in Allah's hands? No, it was in our free will. The angel of death has a clipboard, but that clipboard can erase itself depending on our behavior. Likewise, you find in the Quran, Allah shows that there was only one group of people in the Quran who Allah had promised that they would be punished. But because of their tawbah, Allah removed the punishment. Which group? The people of Yunus. Nabi Yunus tried for years with his people, 33 years, the people of Mosul in Iraq. He tried with them for 33 years to change them. They wouldn't change. He had two companions. One, his name was Rabil, and the other, his name was Tanocha. Rabil was a very sincere and scholarly man. Tanocha was more of a worshipper, not very scholarly. Prophet looked at them, he said, "What do you think?" Rabil said, "Oh Prophet of God, remain patient. Let's try, even if one person changes, let's try." They tried to remain patient, they tried, still nobody would change. Nabi Yunus went to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he went to him, and you've read in the Quran, وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا, he went to him angry with his people. He said, "Ya Allah, these people, none of them are changing. I've tried, but they will not change." Allah said, "Very well. I am going to tell you of a punishment that will come to them when? Will come to them in the Wednesday, in the middle of Shawwal. There will be a punishment coming to them." Nabi Yunus went and informed them that if you do not change your actions, it is written on the Wednesday in Shawwal that you will be punished. Nabi Yunus decided to leave them. Rabil, his companion, stayed with them. And he started telling them, "Oh people, Allah has warned you of a punishment. It's been written on the Wednesday in Shawwal, this whole place will be punished. Why don't you use your free will and change your destiny? Use your free will." What did they do? They said to him, "What shall we do?" He said, "Separate from your children, separate from your parents, just go alone and pray and ask Allah for forgiveness." In the Quran, every group of people who Allah warned of a punishment and they didn't change were punished, except one group, the people of Yunus. Because of their tawbah, because of them seeking forgiveness, using their free will to change their life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow His punishment to descend upon them. Because of what? Not because of Allah's knowledge, rather because Allah wanted to show that mankind, I will not change a group of people until they change themselves. That is the line for predestination and free will. Because those who say all our actions are predestined, then why does Allah tell us, I won't change a group of people until they change from themselves? Unless we have the ability within ourselves to change our life and whatever comes in front of us within our life. That's why you find when you look on the 10th of Muharram, what do you find? You find an opposition army of thousands and an army on the side of Abu Abdullah of only 72. Yet have you ever heard that from an army of 30,000, some people from the 30,000 join the 72 and no one from the 72 joins the 30,000? Does it mathematically work? I said, why would you join them? You're going to definitely be victorious. No, unless you use your free will and you ask yourself, will I be responsible for killing the son of Fatima az-Zahra? Will I be the one responsible for killing the grandson of Rasulullah? At this moment, you are using your free will to change your destiny. Up until then, you are going towards a punishment. Unless you say, أُخَيِّرُ نَفْسِي بَيْنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ. Now I have to make a decision in my life between heaven and hell. That's what Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi went through on the days leading up to the 10th of Muharram. Whenever you want to know, brothers and sisters, whether you can change your life, whether you have the free will, look at Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. He is a day away from being cursed by millions, But over one night, he is now revered by millions because he used his free will to change the course of his destiny. And this Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi was not an insincere human being. He was a sincere man. But politically, he had got a couple of things wrong. Because you know very well that Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi met Abu Abdullah on his way towards Kufa. When he met him, the first thing he said to him was what? Ya Abu Abdullah, would you give us some water? Me and my soldiers are thirsty. And our horses are thirsty. Look at Abu Abdullah. The very enemies who are in front of him, he gives them water in order that they are able to quench their thirst. He thanks Abu Abdullah. Then after that, they have to come and pray salah. One of his companions said, I will lead. Listen to what Hur says. He says, how can you lead when the son of Fatima al-Zahra is amongst us? Up until then, he had a political difference, but he still had not realized what was the aim. Because when Imam al-Hussein finished that salah, Imam al-Hussein wanted to proceed towards Kufa. Hur said to him, where are you going? He said, I'm going towards Kufa. He said, why? He said, because of the fact that I've been given letters, people of Kufa want me. Hur said, I'm not one of those who knows of the letters. I've just been told that I have to take you towards Ibn Ziyad. And that you're going to give a bay'ah, and that this will all end. Imam al-Hussein looked at him and said to him, may your mother weep over you. To which Hur replied, if it was the son of any other mother, I would have replied back to you. But how can I reply to the son of Fatima al-Zahra? He looked at him and then he walked away. He said, but I'm going to have to make you pledge the allegiance. He made them stay in Karbala. This remained in his heart forever. That on the night of the 10th of Muharram, he began to ask himself questions, especially when he heard from the cry of the army of Hussein, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. He kept on hearing these young children crying, Ruqayya bint al-Hussein, Sukayna bint al-Hussein. He would hear them crying and it started to affect him. He started to walk one way and then he began to walk the other. There were three things on the 10th of Muharram which hurt him, which made him change. These three things show you, brothers and sisters, that everybody can change. Never think that you are not religious enough to change. You can all change. It's about whether you use your free will to change. Don't blame everything on God. Use your free will. What happened? The first thing that hurt him when he heard Umar ibn Sa'ad saying to him. Hur said to him, he said, Umar ibn Sa'ad, what's going to happen this morning? What's the plans? He said to him, this morning, heads will be severed and hands will be flying. He began to look around. He saw it was an ominous situation. The second thing that affected him was when Shimr bin al-Jawshan looked at the Imam al-Hussein's army. He saw Abu Abdullah putting a fire in front of his tent and he said to him, Hussein, you are already getting ready for the hellfire of the Day of Judgment. He began again to think again. But the third thing is the one that hurts the most. He saw Umar ibn Sa'ad look round at his soldiers. His soldiers were complaining that the hooves of their horses couldn't take the heat of Karbala. He began to ask himself, if the horses cannot take the heat of Karbala, then how is Sukayna and Ruqayya bint al-Hussein taking the heat of Karbala? How is it that I have more time for the horses while the army of Abu Abdullah has no water to drink? He began to walk around. Narrations say to us, he had a son by the name of Ali and his brother Mus'ab was next to him and he had his servant alongside him as well. He began to walk near his horse. He looked at his servant. He said to his servant, oh my servant, I'd like to ask you, does our horse have any water? He said to him, yes, the horse does have water. Muhajir from the army of Shimr bin al-Jawshan looked at him. He said, Hur, I do not know what's happened to your face. Your complexion has changed. You, if anyone told me who's the bravest warrior in Kufa, I would say Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi, what's happened? He said, أخير نفسي بين الجنة والنار. I make a decision between heaven and hell, and I would prefer heaven any time above the hellfire. He began to walk with his brother, with his son, with his servant, but he said something to his servant which causes pain to the heart. He said, cover my face. His servant said, why? He said, I do not have the face to look at Ammar Abdullah. I am the one who diverted Ammar Abdullah towards Karbala. I am the one who has blocked the water from the daughters of Hussein. He came towards Ammar Abdullah. Abu Fadl al-Abbas couldn't see him. He came towards him. Ammar Abdullah said, no, Abu Fadl, come back. Hur bin Yazid came near him. He came near Ammar Abdullah. The first thing he said, Ya Ammar Abdullah, forgive me for blocking the water coming to you. Ya Ammar Abdullah, forgive me for keeping you over here. Ya Ammar Abdullah, I didn't know what the intentions were of the army alongside me. But Ammar Abdullah is a forgiving man. He said to him, Hur, do not worry. Do not worry, Allah will forgive you. You just go out and defend yourself. He tried to welcome him next to him, but Hur said, Ya Ammar Abdullah, let me be the one who fights first. He said to him, why? He said, Ya Ammar Abdullah, I am the one who made you come here. Therefore, I should be the first to die alongside you. He came out, his famous lines, Inni ana al-hurru ومؤوى الضيف أضربكم بأعناقكم بالسيف عن خير من حل بلاد الخيف أضربكم ولا أرى من حيف. He came forward and he said that I am Hur from Bani Riyah, that I come and represent Hussein and defend the army of the greatest one amongst us. Ahadiths narrate to us he sent his son first. His son went onto the battlefield. Every time his son would strike someone, he'd turn around and say, Assalamu alayka ya Ammar Abdullah. Until they killed his son, then he went out on the battlefield. Hadiths narrate to us he fought valiantly. He came and he killed all those who came in front of him, until Umar ibn Sa'ad said, do not fight him one to one. Surround him from every single angle. Do not leave the man alone. They began to strike him from every angle, from the left and from the right, until he was on the ground. Ammar Abdullah ran towards Hur. He came near him. He said, Hur, you are free like your mother named you. He smiled next to Ammar Abdullah. But Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi on the 11th of Muharram, when Umar ibn Sa'ad looked at his horsemen, Umar ibn Sa'ad looked at the horsemen, he said, I want you to trample on the bodies of the companions of Imam al-Hussein. All of these companions were lying on the ground. When the horse riders asked him, which one shall we trample on? He said, trample on the body of Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. But Banu Riyah, his tribe, were present at Karbala. Therefore they came to Umar ibn Sa'ad. They said to him, oh Umar ibn Sa'ad, you have already killed our son, but we do not allow you to humiliate him. We do not allow you to trample on his body. He then began to say, trample on the body of Habib ibn Madahir. Habib ibn Madahir, his tribe were present at Karbala. He then named the companions, but each of the companions had a tribe to protect them. You know where I am going now. He said, trample on the bodies of the family of Ammar Abdullah. They said to him, who should we go to first? He said, go and trample on the body of Ali al-Akbar, the son of Hussein. But Ali al-Akbar, his mother's tribe, were present at Karbala. They didn't allow any horses to trample on his body. He then said, trample on the body of Qasim ibn al-Hasan. But his mother's tribe were present. He then said, trample on the body of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. But his mother's tribe were present, until he asked, is there anybody whose mother and father's tribe are not present to defend him? And they said to him, there is only one whose mother and father's tribe are not present to defend him. He said, who is it? And they replied, Ammar Abdullah has no mother or father to protect him. He then called out, Ya khayl Allah arkabi wadusi sadr al-Hussein. O horses of Allah, ride and trample on the body of Ammar Abdullah.